How young were you when you first started growing a beard?
90.
No, I wasn't, not until I was in my 20s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in my 20s, I decided, like, at the time, everybody had goatees, so I tried that out, and then I grew a full beard, and then once I decided that my hair was thinning, and that I was just going to embrace it and shave my head.
Yeah. Hello, welcome to another episode. We are here with Aaron Sparrow, and you can too.
Aaron's motto is Aaron Sparrow, spare no arrow.
Exactly, and he will live and die on that hill.
Well, Aaron is an artist, been working in the field for a long time. He's most famous for Darkwing Duck. He created the show for TV, but they wouldn't let him use his stories. But he got back at them later when they started publishing the Darkwing Duck comic, which he both wrote and illustrated. But he's a very wide-ranging illustrator. He can do not only funny animal stuff, but superhero stuff too. And in fact, a lot of his work reminds me of Bruce Timm. I should say that to Aaron. Aaron, a lot of your work reminds me of Bruce Timm.
Well, actually, I'm actually the writer. So what you're looking at is the artwork is James Silvani.
Oh,
so,
never mind.
So it's James Silvani who
but you're telling him to draw it that way.
Yeah. So when I actually, when James is like, hey, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Yeah. I'll just rip off his style.
But you worked on the animated show, right?
No, I did not. Actually, I was too young to work on the animated show. The show was created by Tad Stones with various other collaborators at Disney, and then it was a big influence on me. I absolutely loved the show as a kid, and I always told myself, if I ever got a chance to work in comics, I would love to bring Darkwing Duck back. So I had a whole plan in my head, and then through sheer, call it fate, call it karma, or just divine guidance, I ended up at a company, Boom Studios, that had the Disney license. Okay. And so while they were interviewing me, and they were like, "Okay, well, we want to bring you on." What we want you to work on is we have the Disney license. We want you to do Disney books. And I immediately asked, I said, is Darkwing Duck part of the license? And they asked me, like, what is that? And so, I explained to them what it was, and they weren't particularly interested. But I kept pushing, while I was there. Their plan was like Mickey and the Standards, and they were going to make these, do these Mickey compilations that they were going to send out to libraries, and every library was going to order 5 copies, and they were going to make all this money. And it didn't work out that way. So eventually their desperation plunged to the level that they were like, well, just give him a 4-issue miniseries and shut him up, about this Darkwing thing. And it ended up being the most successful Disney launch that we'd had.
Didn't you write an episode or two of Young Justice?
Yeah. I got to write an episode of Young Justice this last season on HBO Max. Was really grateful for that. Greg Weisman is somebody that I met through working on Darkwing, and I would put together panels at cons, for like the Disney afternoon. And of course, cool. Greg is the creator of Gargoyles. So He was always a big get for me, because it was like I was a big Gargoyles fan too. And we became friends, and the opportunity came up for me to write an episode. And he called me, and I got to work with the New Gods, which is fantastic. I got to work with Rocket from Milestone. So I got to handle like Jay Garrick. So just being able to write those characters was just mind blowing.
So he has done some TV stuff.
I have. I've done a bunch of script polishing too that you don't really get credit for, but
yeah, right.
You know about Carl Barks, right?
Oh yeah, big Carl Barks fan. Love his.
Well, the big question is, does Darkwing Duck live in the same universe as Uncle Scrooge and the boys?
Tad Stones would tell you no. He would tell you that DuckTales and Darkwing are not connected. But what we did with the comic was we tried to bring it all together. And then later DuckTales 2017, when they relaunched it, did kind of the same thing and got to do it in a much more expanded version than we were allowed to. But
Right.
my feeling has always been, yes, Darkwing exists in the same universe as Scrooge. We put Scrooge and the boys in our first miniseries, The Duck Knight Returns. At the very end, he's called in because the company Quackworks, which has been the villain of the piece, is too big to fail. So they bring Scrooge in to kind of like set up a new board and everything. So we got to bring in Scrooge. And then even at the end of when we did the Definitively Dangerous edition, and we had to cut out a story that was published without approval and that we just didn't have the budget to fix. So we had to write a new ending for it. We brought Scrooge back in, and
Great.
they passed the CEO position from Launchpad to a character that we introduced, and then you find out that Launchpad actually spent a bunch of Scrooge's money, so it ends with Scrooge like smacking him with the cane. Yeah, and then when they lost the license, it went over to a smaller publisher a few years later named Joe Books, which is where we got to print the definitive version of the work, because there's a lot of shenanigans on the Boom side, so we didn't really get the proper credit. A lot of things were rewritten. The character voices weren't there. So when they came back and wanted to republish it, Disney told Joe Books, "Well, hey, can you get James and Aaron to come back and restore their original scripts?" And so that's what we did, and tweaked them a little bit, and put out a version that was much more satisfying to the fans.
Does Dynamite have it now, or did they for a time?
Yeah, Dynamite has the Disney license now.
Yeah, I was gonna say when I was looking up stuff, yeah, it seemed like there was a lot with Dynamite on it.
And in their infinite wisdom, they decided not to bring James and I back. So
yeah, that's all. Yeah, they always want to work with people that they know, or
yeah. And it's being packaged by like a third party editor and things like that, which is kind of how Dynamite does things. So and we weren't on his list. So the fans, there's a lot of fans that kind of like revolted, at that point.
Yeah.
Like there always are, and I'm always thankful for how much the fans appreciated what James and I did, and we're thinking of doing it for free. John Bernstein.
Nice.
Let's not be hasty. What are you working on now?
So right now I'm working over at Merc Publishing. They're a publisher that does a lot of Kickstarter stuff. They've had some stuff in Lunar. Was working on Miss Meow, a book called Death Rage, which has been just a heck of a lot of fun. And then overseeing, with Joe Corallo, my editor, overseeing Born of Blood, which is another title that we do. And right now I'm currently working on a catfight series for them, which is one of the villains. So I'm going to tell a 3-issue story with the villain Catfight.
That's the name of the villain?
Yep.
That's great. That's a great name. I don't know why that happened.
It seems like it should have been it should have been out there years ago, right? But
yeah.
It's just recently they were like, hey, nobody's ever used this name.
When you were growing up or anything, was that like you liked? Were you more into like funny animals kind of style stuff, or did you like the superhero stuff too, or?
Well, my entry into like kind of just liking comics was comic strips. So, and Garfield was really big at the time, and I discovered pretty early on that I could draw Garfield.
Yeah.
I could draw all of Garfield's characters, and Garfield had this superhero identity, the Caped Avenger.
Right.
And so I just started drawing these little like Caped Avenger comics, and they started to get more and more serious, which, it was like, I'm using Garfield and I'm creating like my own characters, but the villains are very serious and everything. And I was kind of like, what's going on? And then my gateway drug into just regular comics buying, because, my grandmother would, I'd go to visit my great grandmother, and her neighbor like loved the Archie digest. So she would give me Archie and boxes of Archie comics and Sugar and Spike from DC. And so I'd see ads for like the superhero characters, and I was really intrigued. But it was really G.I. Joe that was kind of my gateway drug into regular comic buying, where instead of just picking up an issue here and there or getting one from somebody, I started going to the Circle K or the 7-Eleven and grabbing comics off the rack, because I was reading G.I. Joe and I was loving it, and then you'd see like an ad for the X-Men and you'd be like, oh, who are these characters? So I got into X-Men. That got me into the bigger Marvel universe, and then of course all the hype leading into Batman '89 got me to start picking up Batman. And from Batman, I was into the DC universe, and I was just hooked.
Cool. Yeah.
My first exposure to comics was Uncle Scrooge.
I had a bunch of those from, that like my grandmother would give me. And so I was really into them, but I didn't know, at the time I was so young, I didn't know how to find them myself. I didn't know where they came from.
Well, how old were you?
Oh God, I was probably like 5 or 6 when she started giving me comic books.
What was the effect they had on you at that time?
I mean, my mind was blown. It was, it's just amazing. Like, you wait a minute. You mean that I can't go see Star Wars in the movie theater again, but I can read about it every month in the comics.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Even as a kid, like there was things that you were like, well, this is goofy. Like, and they introduced Jackson the Green Rabbit, who, I actually have a lot of appreciation for. But
yeah.
But at the time when you're a kid, you're like, well, this isn't, this feels weird. But you just kind of went with it. But I fell in love immediately.
Oh, it was great back then when it would be 4 years in between movies or something.
Oh, as far as the Scrooge comics go, very few comics have approached that level of sophistication and storytelling when it clicks on all cylinders. I mean, Carl Barks is just such a master that anybody who wants to do comics for a living, I would tell them to read Uncle Scrooge and see what that guy was doing.
I think even Larry Hama, because I was hooked on G.I. Joe, I think even Larry Hama said that he bases his, like, the way he writes is kind of like based off of the influence of Carl Barks. And
I'm not surprised.
And when I saw Indiana Jones for the first time, when I first saw Raiders of the Lost Ark in theaters, I was like, this is Scrooge. This is a Scrooge movie.
Yeah.
It's a shame now, because now I'm sure, like, you try to do Scrooge nowadays, he probably has to apologize for plundering all those treasures.
That'd be a wonderful premise for comic.
I think they tried it at Boom after I was gone. I think Warren Spector wrote a book called Rightful Owners was the name of the arc, and he was kind of like returning some things, I think. But
that's not the way I would do it.
No, I don't think that's the way. I don't think that it's like I think Webby was like shaming him, and it didn't last, and the license was gone from Boom shortly after that because of some of their shenanigans. But what are you going to do?
It's too bad, because Boom has made a lot of good books, but I've just heard so much about them. Not to trash talk, but it's like, man, they have some really good comics and stuff that they have put out, and just the stories I've heard from creators.
I was trying to get decent page rates for our talent.
Yeah.
And they kept telling me, cut the rate. And I'm like, this guy's like delivering for us, and he's doing all the marketing on his own, So I was, I was kind of like fighting for creators to have, a wage that they could, live on, so that they could actually do their best work for us. And I was told that the only people stupid enough to think that they should be able to earn a living in comics are comic artists. And so it was, it was one of those really like eye-opening kind of things about the attitude of a publisher towards the creatives, is that they were just people there to be used. And I just kind of realized how little I was getting paid. That it was the same with me. For all the talk of you going in and them telling you we're a family. We're a family when you need me to work a 16-hour day to get something out the door. But if I need a day off, then all of a sudden we're not really family anymore, and it's a problem.
Can you tell us what your page rate was?
I wasn't getting a page rate. I was getting paid as an editor. And when they brought me in their office was on Wilshire in Los Angeles, very expensive. And they wanted me to move to Los Angeles, but they were paying me $30,000.
But pay you crap.
Yeah, $30,000 a year, and expecting me to live in LA. And I was like, I'm going to have like 8 roommates. Now, fortunately for me, I have a bunch of side hustles. I sell toys. I sell collections and things like that. So I was able to make it work just because I wanted to do comics, and I wanted to do Disney comics. So as the editor, designing the book and laying out the script and everything, they wouldn't let me actually write it and put my name on it. So basically I gave all of my stuff, all of my ideas, my plot, my breakdowns, everything to another editor who was allowed to write, which didn't make any sense, except for the fact that the editor-in-chief didn't like me very much. Eventually they bumped me up to $35,000 a year. But it was just
how long ago was that?
Oh, this was 2009.
Jesus.
Yeah, and so I only lasted a little over a year, I think, there, and was so like burnt out and stressed out by the time I was done that I was like, never again, never again.
It's crazy, especially with California. But you're still there, right?
I'm still here. I have not escaped yet. I'm always looking for. I've got some connections here that I can't sever quite yet, or that can't I can't move over. But as soon as I can, man, I'm out of here. It is a beautiful state. It is like one of the most beautiful states in the country, I think.
Yeah.
We got great weather. You got the beaches. You got the mountains. But it's just run by complete idiots, and it's just getting worse and worse all the time.
Where would you move to?
Either Texas or Florida, I think, is where I've been looking. Although, I've heard
Right.
but Florida is super humid, which I hate.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I'm trying to leave. I have
Really?
me. Yes. I've told Mike this so many times. Because humidity is one of the worst things for arthritis, and I have really bad arthritis. And
you need the dry heat. You need like an Arizona.
Right. Exactly.
Where are you looking at, Jeff?
Where am I looking at?
Yeah.
Are we talking to Aaron or what? I'm looking
I'm
the Carolinas. I'm looking at we're actually one of the places. So basically, anybody that has really bad arthritis knows that like every time the weather change, the pressure changes and stuff like that, it just kills your joints and everything. So you look for places either that are and I know Mike would love for me to move to Colorado, but my wife would never live there because gets too cold. But we would do the Carolinas, and specifically Asheville, North Carolina, because there's a pocket between Asheville and where it is one of the most and a couple other places are where the weather's the most stable. Like it doesn't do these big like in Florida because it's tropical. Oh my gosh! I mean, it's like 50 one day, 100 the next, and like all humidity, 20% humidity. I mean, it's just every day. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I mean, for people with arthritis and things like that, it's like terrible.
Yeah, California weather's pretty consistent. We've had a lot of rain this year, which is really good.
That's great for you guys.
Because, I mean, we
had droughts and stuff.
I mean, I was assured by Governor Jerry Brown that we were in a permanent drought because of climate change, and that's why we shouldn't build any more reservoirs and should put that money into high-speed rail. And now we've had all these rains and no reservoirs to soak it up, so it all just pours out to the ocean because we got such great leadership here. I always say this about the comics industry is, the loudest people always seem to get the most attention.
And stuff. Yeah.
And so, the people that act like jerks and they're always the ones that everybody's looking at and going, oh man. But, and when you see people who only like exist within the comic industry bubble, they think the world is terrible and everybody's awful and et cetera, et cetera. I'm always like, if you go out and you like just mingle, fortunately, like I keep my fingers in a lot of different industries. I said, there's good people everywhere, and there's people that'll have your back, and there's, people that are, honorable and try to do the right thing, and they're in comics, they're in entertainment. You just have to look for them. But if you just stay in like a little tiny bubble, you're going to think everything's awful.
With the different industries and stuff that you do, are you creating any of that? Are you selling a lot?
Yeah. So I, for action figures, we do 3D custom designed and printed heads and,
cool.
Accessories and things like that, so that you can mix up your action figure collection. Like, here's just like right here on my desk, there's a little Vampire Lord head sculpt that we did to go on some Mythic Legion figures.
It looks like Mike.
Mike takes that hat off and he has that flowing mane, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Ah! He does. He's got a thick head of hair. Oh, I'm jealous. So I do that. Obviously I sell action figures. I do script doctoring. Just all over the place with my different hobbies, and kind of like making them my job. But that's what allows me to work in comics, is because I have so many other things that actually make money.
Are those computer-generated action figures?
No, I mean, they're actually, you go into a program called, Nomad, or there's another one that just escapes me right now, but that we use that, you go in and you sculpt, you 3D sculpt it. And then once it's done, you print it. And then sometimes we cast it just for ease of being able to, produce multiples, because you don't want to tie up, even though we have like 8 printers, you don't want to tie up your printers all day, just printing.
Do you do any of the design work?
Yeah, I do a little bit of it. Mostly I do the art design. So like I tell the artist, what it is we want, tweak this, tweak that. But I'm actually good enough to go in and make minor adjustments on things. I'm not good enough yet to do a whole sculpt myself, but right. I'm trying to get there.
With you balancing all of these different things, are you very how do you schedule it and plan it and stay focused and still get everything done?
I mean, I just work continuously, basically, is what what I do. But I basically hand things off a lot, or I switch things up. So no week really looks the same. It just depends on what my priority is. So if I've got scripts that need to be done, then that's my focus. But I will occasionally, have to take a break from the script, and I might paint something at my desk, or like while I'm considering a story problem, just kind of let it churn in the background, and then when it pops, I put the painting aside and go back to writing. So I find that having a lot of different things that you can do really helps with when you get stuck in a story. You're like, well, okay, push that to the side, because if you sit there and you just in front of the computer trying to force it, I find that it doesn't happen for me. So I have to have something where it's in the subconscious, and then I'll come to the solution.
That's advice I give to every writer is when you run into a roadblock, you switch projects.
Yeah. And so that's the nice thing about juggling multiple things is, even like, so right now, it's like I'm working on Catfight, and I finished the first issue, and then I went through it and I was like, I don't like it. I don't like what I came up with. I like this part. I like this part. I'm not feeling this. So went back to the drawing board and started over. But while I was resetting my brain, I went and I worked on a creator-owned book that I'm planning on doing. So, it kind of, it just gave me, it was just a totally different kind of book. So, whereas Catfight's very serious and kind of gory and psychological, this other book is very fun and very kind of like Venture Brothers or Johnny Quest, or, it's got a lot of those elements, The Tick. Nice. Big influence on me was Sam and Max by Steve Purcell. So that's a big influence on my humor. So, it's a book kind of like it with all of those kind of influences.
What's the art style for Catfight?
Sexy 90s style. that's what we do at Merc. Is
who's John?
So Catfight, we've not settled on our artist yet. We've got a couple of people in the running. We're just waiting for some test pages back, and then we'll make our decision. But I've gotten to work with some great artists at Merc. I did with Emiliano. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I don't want to butcher it, but I think it's Arrudia. So that'll be my closest stab at it. Okay. But Emiliano, just absolutely fantastic. I get to work with Renzo Rodriguez a lot. He's actually going to be drawing my creator-owned book. And we're having a lot of fun with that. Like he's just really excited about designs and like really pushing the envelope. He's actually an artist that I will tell, you don't have to be this detailed. Yeah. And he's like, but I love it, and I'm like, okay, but I mean, like, just don't kill yourself on every single panel.
You're gonna burn out.
Yeah, but he's like, but man, he's got so much energy. He's unbelievable. I love working with him. And I got to work with Victor Serra on Miss Meow until he had a little bit of a medical issue and had to drop out of later issues. So I got to actually work with Nate Watson, who drew for me at Boom Studios. And then I was trying to get him from Toy Story to some of the more superhero-oriented books. But the editor-in-chief at the time didn't feel like he was, as he said it, he's not ready for prime time. And then Nate went and worked at Lucasfilm for several years, designing ships and aliens and things like that. So I was like, this was still when Lucas owned it. So it was, you don't get any more prime time than that.
Yeah.
So
when you write your comics, do you use like what kind of format do you do? Do you do like a screenplay format, or do you do the?
No, I had to do animation screenplay format for Young Justice, which was a new experience for me.
So you hadn't done that. Yeah,
I had not done that, but I haven't like translated that over to comics. I still write write comics like I say a few years ago, but man, how long has it been since Green Lantern Rebirth?
Oh wow, yeah,
it's been decades, right?
Yeah.
So when that came out, I had a script format that I was using. But then in the back, Jeff Johns had script format.
His script, yeah,
he had a script in the back, and so I started emulating his script format.
And the artist used to like the way Mike would do it, where he would actually draw the panels like a comic strip, and the artists would like it because they, it was closer to what they were going to be doing, anyways. But yeah.
Yeah, I imagine that's the advantage of being Mike Baron is that you
can this is when I first started in the industry. It's how I wrote comics for 20 years.
Yeah.
I draw each page out by hand.
But not anymore.
No, I'll draw when I have to.
Do you find that you'll still draw something when you're like, I really need the artist to get this?
To understand
yes, I do.
That makes sense.
Do you have a Darkwing Duck figure behind you?
I do have some Darkwing Duck figures. I don't have one like right here behind me because right now my theme is half Marvel, half He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So there's Snake Mountain and Castle Grayskull.
Yeah.
And and then some Marvel DC over here. Like I've got Galactus, but he's covered in Starros. So
interesting.
Yeah. So like this side right now, I'm just kind of like playing around with. There's just some characters standing around. There's no real theme. But no, I own a lot of Darkwing stuff. I own like all the figures from the 90s, the Quack, the Jet, the Ratcatcher, which is his motorcycle that's kind of designed after Judge Dredd's Lawmaster. Yeah, Tad Stone said that was the inspiration for that.
Cool.
And then I actually have a custom Quackerjack figure that I had commissioned, 3D modeled and then printed. That's sitting waiting for me to paint it.
Great.
That's nice.
But a lot of Scrooge stuff.
Did you see the show The Peripheral?
I've seen some of it.
She worked in like a 3D print shop, didn't she? The main girl in that.
I think so.
They had one in town.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if you think that we're going to be heading that way. I mean, we have some now, but I'm just wondering how much more we're going to head that way with computer and technology, like where it is.
I saw something written by an AI the other day. It was like a poem that someone did in Dr. Seuss style, and I was like, "Wow, this is really, really good." And it's a little bit intimidating, but I guess everybody's just got to step up their game. I don't think that it'll ever, hopefully, it never replaces human writing, and human art. I know that's the big concern right now, but no, I think the 3D printed stuff is great. It's leveled the playing field in a lot of ways. It's really making toy manufacturers step up their game, because now, but also it's beneficial to them because it's okay. So say you take a line like Mythic Legions, which is done by the Four Horsemen. It's a fantasy kind of action figure. So it's like this. So you got your orcs, you got your elves, you've got your knights.
Right.
And the nice thing about these is every little piece of it is modular, so you can pop it out and swap them around. So they've already made them very customizable. But this is a custom head. So, as long as you're not producing whole figures and like actually competing with them, you're just doing peripheral parts. You're actually helping them out because you're pushing people to buy more figures so they can add the parts to them. It's a beneficial relationship, and I think that most toy companies have recognized that so far.
It would seem like that they would get into licensing more and more with and letting people do it for a fee or carry the design or something.
Yeah, there's I can't remember which one it is, or I would totally shout them out. But there is guys like us that do the 3D parts, but they actually got the Death Dealer license, and they made official like Death Dealer parts. So,
yeah, because you were talking about when we were talking about like Marvel and stuff, and them getting probably more into licensing the way that they already have, and DC has to an extent too. I'm actually shocked since DC has more properties that are expiring license wise, copyright wise. I'm surprised that DC hasn't jumped in on that more and done more with licensing and gone ahead and just got people. I mean, because they only have, I don't know exactly how it works, but I know they only have about 10 more years with Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, because it's like, so Batman enters the public domain, but only in the form
in the original,
in the original form. And then the bat symbol can be trademarked, so you can't use the bat symbol. You have to design your own bat symbol, which I think is why they've tried to design every bat symbol under the sun that they can think of.
Right.
On different characters.
Yeah.
And you won't be able to use the name Batman. You might be able to use Cape Crusader if they haven't trademarked that, or it's like you see the Conan comics that are coming out that are called like the Cimmerian, but not Conan the Barbarian. So there'll be a lot of like tricky workarounds like that, but I think it's a good thing. I think that it's a way to breathe new life into these things. Like I said, we're really inspired by John Byrne going and doing his Elsewhen X-Men, and just kind of doing it for himself, for the fans, and the fans of course can contribute to his Patreon or whatever he does as thank you. But basically, he's doing it for free. And since Dynamite decided to pass on us, and we have so many fans wanting to know what the conclusion of our story is, we're really figuring out the way to bring it to fans, so that they can enjoy it. It's at the point where it's like you don't need permission from these corporations to do fun stuff. Now that in the comic industry and even in the movie industry that essentially they're producing fan fiction, like for example, like
Star Wars.
Like Star Wars now is just Kathleen Kennedy approved fan fiction, and not Lucas canon, and it'll never be canon as far as I'm concerned. But you have fans that are out there producing content that I would much rather consider canon, because they actually care about the lore, they care about the characters. So, and even in comics you're seeing a lot of fan fiction being put out, like, Megan Fitzmartin's Robin series, which is just, an absolute fan fiction. But hey, some other guy on the internet could go and tell a really compelling Robin story that should have been part of the official DC Comics universe. But you just don't have the people running it who know how to identify the difference between something that matters and something that's lore breaking and that's going to actually damage your product, or they just don't care, or they're very interested in damaging the product because they have some kind of agenda. So I think it's it's really good that fans are out there, kind of keeping these things alive. And, eventually I hope that the powers that be recognize that that's what's happening and that they need to kind of like clean house and reset.
And obviously the Snyder Cut is a great example too. It's like, I mean, they'll bend the knee if they have to.
Well, once they realize that there's no profit in pissing off your customers.
Right.
And, Disney, or Disney Lucasfilm is still very much in the process of calling their customers names if you don't like the product.
Right.
But they'll be the slowest one to change. But as the stock continues to drop and less people are interested in these things, and the merchandising money stops coming in because it's not worth it for these companies to pay for a license that you've damaged.
Thousands signed petition demanding Disney stop grooming children.
Damn. That's I was thinking the other day, I was looking and obviously I'm a big fan of Walt and of what Disney used to be. I'm very much a fan of the Disney tradition and the kind of family aspect of Disney and the magic and everything that was present when I was young. And it kind of grieves me that that's not present today. It's all just so manufactured. Pixie dust is synthetic, nowadays. It's not real anymore. There's no real magic. And so it really breaks my heart. So when you see something like that, that's what Disney is being identified with by their policies and by the statements that they've made and things like that. It really breaks my heart that this is where we're at now, because it's a company that I've just put so much, even just in the Darkwing series, put so much blood and sweat into. And I was thinking the other day on Twitter, why does Disney advertise on Twitter? It makes no sense to me, because if you look at the comments, they're just getting shredded every single time. And it's like, you guys, now they've started turning off comments on their YouTube trailers and things like that because they're just getting shredded. But it's like, that should really tell you something. The loss of profits, the fact that Lightyear failed, the fact that Strange New Worlds failed, and the fact that Mario just came out and is a film with no agenda. It's not trying to beat you over the head with anything. It's just trying to be entertaining. And that movie has just drew families in, which used to be your audience.
Oh, and that's big time money too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should tell you something about the direction that you're heading, is that families are walking away from you. And you've got to course correct. You've got to, look, politics is the Scylla and the Charybdis. You've got to try to sail right between those, because, right now it's so polarized that no matter which way you go, you're going to piss somebody off. So you should just try to entertain.
One of the comics that I liked when I was growing up was the Green Lantern, Green Arrow comic, which was kind of like a conservative and a liberal trying to work together. I just don't think we could even do that nowadays.
Well, Denny O'Neil was an old school liberal.
Right,
He wrote those stories, of course, and they were shocking when they came out because they dealt with drug addiction, air pollution, racism. Denny was a thinking man's liberal, and he was also a writer first, so he understood good story.
Right.
So the stories were entertaining. They weren't just beating you over the head with a message. And, I interviewed him years later, and he said, I sometimes think that the harsh rhetoric that we used in the 60s and 70s to get things done laid the groundwork for the anything goes vituperation and bitter feelings of today.
That's a very fair statement. I loved those books by Denny. It's got one of my favorite covers of all time, which is what I call the Hal Jordan being a jerk cover. Where he's just like, you always have all the. This is how it's probably not how it's intended, but I always read it this way because I always thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I was Green Arrow going, you always have all the answers, Green Arrow. What's your answer to this? So, it's like, my ward is a junkie, and Speedy's shooting up on the. First of all, you named him Speedy. How did you?
Yeah, I know.
It gave you two different perspectives, and it didn't beat you over the head with either one. It let you kind of decide, whether you kind of fell in the middle, or which character that you identified with more from their point of view. And I thought that was a great way to do it. I also felt that way about Ann Nocenti's Daredevil. Even as a kid reading her Daredevil, I was like, okay, I obviously know that she has a liberal slant. Like I can tell. Even with my limited understanding of politics as a kid. But it was always presented in a way, like I always thought they did a crossover, Punisher and Daredevil, and it was the same story, but it was told from two different perspectives. Yeah, see? I'll bring it around. And so, Anne's perspective, she chose to tell it from the perspective of the suspect, which I thought was interesting. And then it's got one of my favorite lines is the guy saying, like, I got rights. But it's just like, yeah, you got rights. You got the right to bleed out on the pavement. And I was like, man, see, that was gritty stuff. I loved it.
It's so hard to just have a normal conversation with people online that where you're really dealing with issues. And
that also has to do with the nature of the internet, which brings out the worst in people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you can have an anonymous account with a cartoon avatar, and you can say whatever you want with no consequences.
Right.
And I think it was Louis C.K. that I saw on a talk show, and he was talking about the fact he didn't let his daughters have cell phones or be on Facebook or anything like that.
Yeah.
And he said the reason was because he just saw in kids how cruel. He goes, just thinking of how cruel kids could be when I was a kid. Yeah. He goes, and now with the internet, he said, if you said something mean to somebody who's standing in front of you, and then you kind of see like the pain on their face, if you have any kind of empathy or things like that, that's gonna get to you, and you're gonna feel, oh man, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But on the internet, it feels great. On the internet, you just go, owned. You get all of the dopamine with none of the empathy. So it's a really bad scene on the internet.
Some of the different things that help control behavior, where you do it to yourself to help you, like an app or something that's like, okay, to help writers focus or help other people focus, where like it limits you and does not let you on the internet for like so many hours of the day or a certain time or whatever. And I was like, really, there needs to be an app or something that when you go to like post something, like it doesn't actually post it for like an hour or 10 minutes or something, so you can actually think about it after you've kind of put your words down. And
that's a good idea.
It's like, man, it's like that would help a lot of people.
Well, Twitter Blue, you've got like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like 30 seconds before it sends.
Right.
Or you can force send it, but it gives you that 30 seconds of like, do I really want to say this?
Right.
Which I kind of like. There's been studies about there's a certain percentage of people that have no inner monologue. Like they don't have any inner discussions with themselves,
right?
And which is really alarming to me. But then you see Twitter and you go, oh yeah, because every single thought that they have is just out on the internet. Even like the random thought. So we all have stuff that creeps into our brains that shouldn't be there. And I'm sure you guys have it where like something will come into your brain and you'll be like, and then you'll go like, oh, why did I think that? Like, oh, and so you try to like lock down and control your thoughts, because every now and then something will just slip in there, something that's not of your values. But on Twitter, like people are just firing it off all the time and then having to apologize later.
It's digital diarrhea.
But there's a specific guy on Twitter that's kind of like a comic creator in the periphery, like never really been hired by anybody, but does some independent stuff, and just constantly like fighting with Twitter enemies, which to me is just like the most absurd, like concept in the world. But always fighting with Twitter enemies, but then also always begging for money and talking about how miserable his life is. And it's like, so you create all these enemies and then you just hand them joy by telling them how miserable you are and how pathetic you are. And the fact that you can't even pay rent every month. It's really depressing. It's like there, at some point you have to have some kind of, self-awareness and say like, maybe this isn't working for me. Maybe I need to make some changes.
And that's where my new company, Twitter Intervention, comes in.
I don't know if you guys know this, but like one of the things that I did not know until I don't know, like probably like 5 years ago, but with the younger crowd with texting etiquette, like you don't put punctuation at the end of the sentence because that comes across as very like hard to them. So I'm constantly, especially like being a writer, like, and I would sit there and erase my punctuation when I'm like texting my kids or something, or other people I knew that were like younger. And then some people were like making fun of me. Like, they're like, you're a writer. You should be like, this doesn't even, I was like, it's because of my audience that I'm sending it to, and I want to, the way I want to communicate with them. And they're like, oh yeah. Like when he puts a period, yeah, it's like putting
good
his foot
day,
down.
sir.
Yeah, drop it,
Yeah, it's like, and the same with like an exclamation point. It's like, calm down. It's like,
or all caps.
Yeah, or all caps. Why are you yelling? It's like I'm doing all caps to differentiate between this paragraph, which is a totally different subject from this other, and this more important. So I want you to focus on that.
Yeah, and tone's so hard to read, and especially if if the person that you're dealing with is in any way socially awkward. Like somebody on YouTube was trying to set up having somebody come on their show, and they said, "Hey, how's 2:00?" And the guy like responded, and when he responded, in the positive, and he put an exclamation point on it. And like it was just like a one-word response, like perfect or something like that, or something to that effect. But it was in all caps with an exclamation point. And then the host was like, I'm bringing you on my show, on my platform, and you talk to me this way, and et cetera, et cetera. And the other guy was like, wait, what? And it had like another friend had to come in and go, he's excited. He's expressing excitement. He's not being disrespectful. And that's the problem. I've gotten in trouble in relationships with text. I've gotten in trouble in business with text because a lot of times I'm just trying to answer you as soon as possible.
Right.
But if I'm doing something, it'll be a very quick, very blunt like response.
Yeah.
And people will interpret that as like being rude or being snarky or, and I'm like, no, I always tell people, have I ever disrespected you in person?
Yeah.
And they're like, no. And I say, so try to lend me that in text. Like, trust me, I'm really good with words. If I want to disrespect you, you will know it. It will be clear. But if there's any question whatsoever, assume that I'm talking to you the way that that I would talk to you, because I try not to disrespect people until they become, just unforgivably disrespectful, disrespectful. And what I learned early on Twitter, and especially in comics, from going to shows and things like that, is there's a high percentage of people with autism, and to varying degrees on the spectrum. And so sometimes I would get these blunt comments from people, and I'd be like, "This guy's an asshole."
Yeah.
And so my feeling is that I should respond in kind, and then I would have to kind of like pull back and go, "Wait a minute, I'm going to be nice for a long period of time and just kind of feel this out." And often what I would find is that they were autistic. They don't necessarily know how they're coming at you. They don't know how they sound. They're just saying what their feeling is, and they're not couching it in any prettier language or anything like that. So I tend to try to be very forgiving on the internet, because you don't necessarily know who you're talking to, and especially if they've got like a cartoon avatar. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have 5 rules. Number 1 is no sarcasm. Number 2, no ad hominem attacks. Number 3, be brief. Number 4, keep your sense of humor. And number 5, and most important, know when to quit. I will never go beyond one retort to an argument.
Mm-hmm. I've only seen it happen a couple of times. I saw Greg Weisman's change somebody's mind once, and I saw Jesse Blaze Snyder change somebody's mind once. That's the only 2 times on the internet I've ever seen anybody win. So it's like, win somebody over who's determined to argue with them. So it's like, I told both of them, I said, it's like you discovered a unicorn.
Yeah. What are some of Aaron's like ultimate goals? Like after, like what are things that you would love to see happen for you or to be involved with down the road?
It's funny because I tend to be very vocal and very critical of kind of like the current behavior in the comic book industry and the current quality in the comic book industry and in entertainment in general. And so that limits a lot of your opportunities. But I decided a long time ago between if my choices are ass kisser or outlaw, I'm gonna go outlaw every time, because I've got to be true to myself. And so at least if you are somebody who comes to me looking for my take on things, that you're getting my honest opinion. If I think something is good, that I honestly think it's good. If I think something's bad, that you're getting my honest opinion. I'm not just I'm not just out there playing a character. And that's really important to me, because I think that right now, especially with Twitter and with the kind of collapse of media that we're seeing, is people really do crave authenticity.
Yep.
That's why YouTube is so huge, is because you're getting, there's some grifters, but you're getting people's honest takes on things for the most part. Sites like Clownfish TV, where, I've known Neon and Geeky for years through Disney Comics. That's how I first met Neon. And I know that everything that he's saying is absolutely his genuine take on it. So whether I agree or disagree, at least I know I can trust it. And I think so that's really important to me. So I don't have a lot of goals of like, I don't think I'll ever get a call from Marvel. I'll ever get a call from DC. And that's fine, because at the current state of those companies, I don't think I could work within that framework anyway. So my next step is doing what you guys have done, which is go out and do my own creator-owned project.
Yeah.
And so right now I'm working on hashtag Kneel Before Doomface. Check it out on Twitter. We've got a bunch of character designs out there. Renzo and I are currently working on the book. We're getting it ready for
what's that address again, Aaron?
It's hashtag Kneel Before Doomface.
Kneel Before Doomface.
Yes. So the elevator pitch is it's a two-pronged story. On the one hand, you have the two hero characters who are coming to the city to try and make, they've had some success as independent superheroes, but they're trying to come and be, big city superheroes. And the conceit of that is, what if breaking into the superhero business was like trying to break into the modern day comic book industry? So they have to face off with a lot of superhero gatekeepers and all that nonsense. So that's a lot of fun. We're getting a lot of comedy mileage out of
that. Should be a video game.
Well, the character designs definitely lend themselves to it.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, we have Doomface, who is a villain that was banished in the 1980s, who, we have a great character design by Tim Lim. I gave him a bunch of reference, and he came back with he just nailed it.
Yeah.
Gave me exactly what I wanted. So it's a mixture of like great 80s villains like Hordak, Skeletor, Doctor Doom. Obviously Doctor Doom's older in the 80s, but
I see it.
Yeah, a mix of all these kinds of influences, and he's now come back in the present day, and he's going to reestablish his villainous kingdom.
Right.
But he's running into a lot of unexpected political correctness and things like that. So there's a lot of jokes in that, because his major domo that he chooses is very very modern. So she kind of knows what the cultural climate is, and she's trying to advise him and keep him from making faux pas. But he's also a villain and doesn't care. So
you do these drawings?
No, these were done by Renzo Rodriguez.
He's a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's an artist too.
I doodle. Like I'm good enough to I could never draw a book unless it was very amateurish. But I'm good enough if you come up at a convention and I sign a book for you, I can doodle a character for you.
Me too.
Are there any other places that you want people to check stuff out, or that you like people to follow you and stalk you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter right there, as on my picture there. That's my Twitter address.
Okay.
You can follow me on Instagram at just Aaron Sparrow, all one word. I post a lot of toy stuff there, so if you're more interested in that stuff, I do post toy and comic images over there, and occasionally, pictures from when I'm out at a convention or doing something fun.
Yeah.
And then I'd also recommend go over and check out SilvaniArt.com. James is my artist on Darkwing. He's we're working on Doomface together. He's not drawing it, but he is going to do some supplemental art, some covers, some things like that. And he'll be who I'm doing more Darkwing with for free for fans to who enjoyed our series and want to see where it was going. You can check it out. It'll eventually probably be over at Silvani Art, so check him out too.
You still doing some YouTube shows with your buddy?
Yeah, so we do. I'm on Thinking Critical a lot with Wes, so you can look up that YouTube channel. We talk about the various goings on in the industry, and then lately I've been doing the Sunday Night Smackdown with Max von Priestley. I think we're making that a regular thing. So
cool.
If you go over and check out MVP's channel, Max von Priestley, you can find me there. Try to pack everything with infotainment.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, because it seems like a lot of things are heading the licensing way, so it's like things like that are a worthy discussion
2 minutes
to be having.
I like the idea. See, in my head canon, Mike is like an international assassin.
Oh yeah.
And he's just like 2 minutes,
That was Vale my Eric.
Yeah, and then you'll just walk over to a window with a sniper rifle and be like, okay, done.
Yeah.
He's back.
Uh-oh.
Fail.
2 real minutes.
Oh, I didn't you hear me say 2 minutes? Yeah, I we're just wrapping up this live stream here. I'll be with you in 2 minutes.
I just want to. Did you send me a link to the Saints thing?
I'm not sure, but I will when I get off.
Please do.
I will.
Thanks.
You bet.
It's like, Val, don't say anything off color. We can all hear you.
Yeah.
Did you hear him?
Yeah, we could.
Yeah,
because you had it right next to your microphone.
Right.
Yeah, so we should have talked to him, but whatever. Okay.
Didn't we interview him?
Yes, we did.
Oh, we did. Oh, yeah.
We did.
Yeah,
we talked to his film buddy too.
Right, that's right.
So you could have been like, Val, we're on with the Darkwing Duck Yahoo. Do you have anything you want to say?
If I'd have thought of it.
Oh, yeah. Actually, he'd probably say, "Yeah, I need to paint a picture of Howard the Duck and Darkwing Duck together."
That's a good idea.
Funny. at the time that we were doing Darkwing at Joe Books, Chip Zdarsky was doing the Howard the Duck series, and I would tweet as a joke that we should do a crossover, and you know, I don't know if he was joking, but he would tweet back, "We should," you know. And I ran into him at a con years later, and he was a lot of fun. So
yeah, I guess that's it. We'll just watch Mike's dog walk into off into the distance.
No, I've actually loved that. I've loved watching the dogs in the background.
They're fascinating.
Yeah, they don't care that you're doing a live stream. They're like,
yeah, just dragging that dead body across the there.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, guys.
Thanks,
I really
Aaron.
appreciate it. All right,
absolutely.
Have
Thank
a great
you.
Day. Bye.
Your hair was just migrating.
Yeah, it just all came down here. Unfortunately, as you get older, it migrates to your ears and your eyebrows. So every now and then, I'll like walk into the bathroom in the morning, and I'll have just gone overnight. I'll have just gone full